what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Exchange on the Mesh Podcast Network, a monthly conversation about startups and small business with ideas, tools, and advice to operate your business more effectively. On today's show, we're going to talk about low-cost marketing research. How can you find out some information about your potential startup without breaking your bank? We'll have our Small Business of the Month feature. We're also going to be joined by Gale Norris, who's a serial entrepreneur who provides assistance to entrepreneurs. And we're going to be talking with Gary about bootstrapping and feasibility. And actually, we're going to go ahead and introduce Gary and welcome Gary. Gary, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys today.
Well, Gale Norris is here. My name is Jeff Neuville. I'm director of the Small Business Center at Catawba Valley Community College in Hickory, North Carolina. I'm joined by my co-host, Gary Muller, who is the dean of the School of Business, Industry, and Technology at Catawba Valley Community College. Gary Muller, I got two Garys today. Gary Muller, right. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's been a good week.
Been a good week, and we're sitting here in early March in western North Carolina. We've had a little bit of spring, we've had a little bit of summer, and now we seem to be back in winter.
That's what I hear. You can have all four seasons in 1 week here in North Carolina.
That's true.
It's the beauty of North Carolina. So, but anyway, happy to have Gary Muller, happy to have Gale Norris, and I came across an article that I thought would be of interest and wanted to invite Gary Norris to chime in on it as well. It was out of the most recent Entrepreneur Magazine March edition called Hustling for Opinions. And it was about an entrepreneur with a new product. It's a butter dish that she calls Buttery. And she was starting out with her new product and wanted to figure out whether people would buy it or not, which is what we would think any new business wants to think through before they go too far and start writing checks. So before she went out and spent a lot of money on production, she wanted to get some research. She went to a research firm which quoted her $10,000 to go out and do surveying and whatnot, and that was beyond her budget. So what she decided to do was start doing her own interviews whenever she traveled. So she started surveying people in airports when she traveled. And in fact, at one point, she purchased a $39 one-way ticket just so she could get through the security checkpoint and get into the airline waiting areas and start talking to people.
That's a clever way to get
sort of cheap market research.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty quickly, she got over 1,000 surveys, which helped her to validate her product and determine whether people would buy it. Figure out what color she should make it in, and give her some input on what the pricing should be. And it's now available at Bed Bath & Beyond, and it's being sold on QVC. But as I was reading this article, it really struck me that we all deal with people that are starting businesses, and too often they've shown it to friends and family who love it,
of course,
and love them,
That's exactly right.
And and made me start to think a little bit about how do people go out and try to validate their product without breaking the bank,
Mm-hmm.
I know in my experience. Talking to customers is the key, not everyone is good at it, because getting unbiased opinion is a challenge. And Gary Norris, have you seen people struggle with that, or do you have any advice for them when they're going out to talk to customers?
Sure. I think this article is a perfect example of what we're teaching entrepreneurs to do, and that is rather than pay the $10,000, especially in a bootstrap model, rather than pay the $10,000 to have someone go out and do what you really need to be doing yourself to have your finger on the pulse of your target customer, we're encouraging entrepreneurs to identify who they believe their target customer would be and ask them 3 questions. Are you buying this now? How often are you buying this now? And if you are buying it, what are you paying for it now? That tells the entrepreneur 3 things. Is the target customer a buyer? And if they're not buying a similar product, would they buy your product? 2, how often are they going to be buying your product? What's your reorder rate? And 3, what's your target market viability for price? And that's what we encourage them to do, is exactly what the article talks about. She did. Sure, hers is a broader base of customer because it's a consumable, it's butter. But if it's a widget or if it's an intangible service, identifying that target market and asking those 3 questions can save you a lot of money and a lot of time.
And when you read an article like this, at least for me, sometimes it sends me down a rabbit hole a little bit with that wacky internet thing. And so I started just doing a little bit of quick looking around on suggestions on. It's easy to say let's go talk to customers. Sometimes more challenging to do, and if you're in a smaller town or might not have as much access to them, and just some ways, just some suggestions for how you might get out there and reach potential customers. Social media, obviously has a big reach, and if you go out to LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook, they have polls that you can conduct.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And get some feedback there. A few of the articles that I came across suggested attending trade events, trade shows, which does have some cost to it, but it's going to put you in the right place to talk to potential customers there as well. SurveyMonkey is something that we use at our small business center, where you can put together free surveys. They have some limitations on the free version, but you can put surveys together to reach out to people. Focus groups, I ran across information there with pros and cons, in that not everybody can properly conduct a focus group. If you're doing a focus group with friends and family, they're probably going to love it. So being able to do it in an unbiased type fashion.
To get the right people in the group. And
be able to ask the right questions to get. You're trying to get a hold of reality here.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
exactly.
So these are challenges, and ultimately getting samples in the hands of potential customers and getting their feedback. So those are some of the things that I was coming across.
Yeah, that's huge. A lot of entrepreneurs are afraid. As we've seen a lot of times in our consulting, entrepreneurs are afraid to have that initial conversation with the customer. But I think
afraid because of what they might hear, or
right, or just I'm just nervous about getting on the phone.
Right,
it's
exactly.
Phone nervousness, or maybe just an introvertedness about what if I'm rejected, a fear of rejection.
Yeah, exactly.
And once I hold their hand and I show them how I do it, it's really just like talking to a family member. You're just asking them to help you, and rather than calling someone and saying, listen, I'm conducting a survey, I'm with such and such research group, we want to, instead of going that route, if an entrepreneur calls and say, listen, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm thinking about doing this, and it would really help me if you would tell me what you think about my idea. People are 99 times they're very willing to give their opinion.
Yeah, because if you get that, I'm conducting a survey, you get a lot of clicks, I suspect.
Right. Sure.
Anyway, as we were talking, just some food for thought in terms of all these ways. To me, the common theme is you got to talk to your customers and get their actual feedback. It's great that you come up with a business idea or a service, invention, product, whatnot. But if you do it in the ivory tower and you don't reach out and get customer input, your chances of success without getting that input are a lot lower than once you get the input.
That's true.
So, anyway, all right. So that's our article for your thinking and your thoughts today. And really, what we want to talk with Gary Norris about is related to this is assessing business feasibility and some ideas for ways to bootstrap your business which means getting your business up and running with a limited amount of funds. And Gary, as I mentioned, is what we might call a serial entrepreneur. And he has founded several companies, including Northwind Companies and Compass Coaching. And last year he started Norris Ventures to work with entrepreneurs and assist them in the startup phase and develop sales and marketing strategies with them. So Gary, welcome again.
Yes, it's so good to be with you, both of you. It's good to be
because he's just here.
I know. Like you never left. We're just surrounded by Garys. So Gary, when you are working with entrepreneurs, and to me, always one of the first things that we're trying to get to is really doing some assessment of, can a business be feasible? Can it be profitable? I mean, how do you try to help entrepreneurs think through that process when you're working with them?
Well, I think the first thing that an entrepreneur absolutely must do is determine if there is a target market. And that's where that research begins that we were just talking about. If you can identify that you have a target market, then you have a place to begin building an idea. And I'll just use personal experience for myself. I knew that for my concept at Northwind Companies, there were other companies doing a similar type thing. So I already knew who my target customer would be: hospitals, clinics, healthcare providers. So then I knew exactly where I could begin to have my conversations about, is this something you would buy? How often do you buy it, and what would you pay for it? So the first thing that I lead entrepreneurs to do is, obviously, one of those big pieces is a business plan. And in my perception, the business plan is really most important for the entrepreneur, because it helps them unpack every nook and cranny of what they're thinking about a business plan, and it really causes them to think about things they normally wouldn't think about. Even if no one ever sees that but them, I always tell entrepreneurs, you need to revisit that every 90 days and just unpack it again and again and just keep evolving. But once you've gotten on the other side of it on paper, and then you've identified your target market, then you can begin to reach out to that target market and explore with them how they would respond to your approach to that service or product. And that's where we start.
I always think that these days when you tell people they have to do a business plan, their eyes glaze over. I think we have to come up with a new term for that. I don't know. So I was at a program last night on how to start a food business, and one of the people on the panel said, "Well, some people give me 25-page business plans, and I'm happy to read them, and I don't know anyone that's happy to read a 25-page business plan."
No, I would agree.
But anyway, trying to validate the target market is always a starting point there.
Exactly, always. The business plan it's really business feasibility on paper is what it is. Mm-hmm. And the business feasibility has to start with you. How many of us here have met business aspiring entrepreneurs who have an idea, but they don't even have it worked out in their own mind?
They just have an idea.
They have an idea.
And they think it'll work.
Yeah.
But they haven't gone through all. That's why people have their eyes glaze over with a business plan, because it means you've got to, as you say, unpack it. I love that term. And that's a difficult process. It is.
But it's imperative.
But it's the only way you're going to be successful is to go through those details.
Look, I'm not a fan of them either. I'm not a fan of business planning.
I'm not crazy about reading 25-page business plans.
Well, and to me, like a key link between the business plan and the feasibility is, at some point you got to get numbers on a page and say, what are you going to charge for this product or service? What is it going to cost you to produce this product or service? How many of them do you think you can reasonably sell? How do you get people thinking like that?
Well, I mean, that's where that whole the line of questioning goes when it says, how much would you pay for it? Your target market, you may be thinking that your product is worth $100, but your target market may only respond to $30. Well, if consistently your target market only responds with a $30 average ticket, you need to go back to your math and say, can we viably and profitably launch this business at $30 when that's what the market is yielding? And that will tell you a ton as to whether or not.
Yeah, because you might do a survey and they say, do you like this product? Would you buy it? And go, yes. But if you don't follow through and say, what are you willing to pay for it? Sounds like a pretty logical thing that you would ask, but a lot of people don't necessarily want to know that.
Yeah, well, you got to know it. I mean, you just got to know what your market's going to pay. How many times have we seen entrepreneurs take all the steps except the financial one and put a price tag on it that's unreasonable, and no one responds? Their target market says, "We love everything about you but the price." And why didn't I know that before? Well, that was that painful piece.
Yep, exactly.
We really didn't. That's the bridge we didn't want to cross.
Yeah, because we didn't want to get rejected too early in the process.
Right. And every entrepreneur sees 12 figures in the bank when they start their business. They're thinking this is going to be awesome. We're going to make lots of money. And the only way to accomplish the reality of that is knowing what your target market's willing to pay.
Well, once you cross that hurdle of saying it looks like this can be a workable business, looks like this can be a profitable business. One of the next questions that I often get, probably you guys often get, is, "Gosh, I need some money to get this thing off the ground." And there is some money out there for new businesses, but it's tough, and it's not always the right way to go. And the concept of bootstrapping is one in which you use your existing resources, your own resources, to get up and running. And Gary, I know this is something that you're very, very big on. So tell us about your thoughts on bootstrapping, and when you work with people, how do you direct them to make that a winner for them?
Sure. A lot of people call it self-capitalization, but bootstrapping, self-capitalizing, same thing. The biggest part of that is being willing to have conversations with the vendors that it's going to take to get you through the first 90 days. That say, the conversation says, are you willing to give me net terms on the products or services that I need from you to launch my business, based on what we call letters of intent or purchase orders. So if you have a viable, let's just use a tangible product. We have a product, we know what it's going to cost us to get to produce it. We know what it's going to cost us to take it to market. And then we know what it's going to cost us to remain in the market. So we call it's kind of two financial buckets. It's from concept to launch, and then from day one launch on. So you've got your get to day one and then operational.
Sometimes I might call that the startup expenses, then your operating expenses.
That's right. Sure. So once you've determined what the math is for the startup, you can go to the vendors that make that startup a reality and say, "I need terms. Can you give me terms based on the market's response to my product via a PO or a letter of intent to purchase?" And in this economy, as we were talking earlier, Gary, that 9 times out of 10, what we're finding, and I should have mentioned this to you earlier, the letter of intent to purchase and the PO is currency in this market. Even to banks and to investors. I talk to them every week. Investors, one of their first questions is, do they have a letter of intent or do they have a PO? And that becomes the currency, the collateral really, for the ask or for the loan. So that's where we start. We ask for the vendors for terms. And if the vendors will give us terms, then we borrow only, if we need to borrow at all, we'll borrow only what we need to get to liquid revenue, which may be 60 days, 90 days, 6 months, whatever it is, we know that in advance. And instead of borrowing a 3-year overhead coverage loan or some exorbitant amount that will prevent us from touching our profits in those 3 years, we only get what I call enough for the net, which is a 90-day loan to get me to liquid revenue. And then that's paid off, and I'm the first one to touch my profits in 90 days.
Yeah, and when it comes to 90-day loans, is that Guido or who's making those 90-day loans? And if you don't pay them back, do you lose a finger or something?
Right, it could be Guido, but then it could be Uncle Tommy or but it's a much smaller amount. And what that does, most lenders have a $5,000 minimum. And let's make no mistake, those smaller loans have higher rates because the lender has to make their return. But I would rather pay a higher rate for a smaller amount and be out of that, from underneath that debt sooner, than have to get a better rate and still be under the debt in 3 years without being able to touch my profits. Because the lender touches the profits before anybody once you're making money.
So understanding that how quickly you can get to profits is certainly important. One of the challenges that I see when I talk to entrepreneurs, I'd be interested in your perspective, is too many of them come in and say, well, here are my numbers, and by the way, I need to be clearing $3,000 or $4,000 a month from month one. I got expenses, which I'm sure you do, and making sure that they can cover their initial expenses and is certainly important. But a lot of startups don't have the luxury of paying salaries to ownership off the bat. And how do you direct people in those situations?
Well, I think it's important that they do understand that there are going to be some sacrifices, that it isn't a job.
You're going to take my cable TV away in March? I got basketball to watch.
Potentially. My wife would appreciate that if we took my cable away. But you have to. That's a very important, serious conversation. That it's not a job. I got this idea. I do talk to a lot of folks and students that say, I'm going to start this job, and then I'm going to make X number of dollars. And I think that's something that needs to be put on the table real quick, because they're going to be very disappointed, and they're going to lose their enthusiasm, and then probably not do well.
But I thought I could go on Shark Tank and they were going to give me $1 million, Gary.
Well, some they will, but as we talked even in our session yesterday with our students, that not every Shark Tank deal goes through, even the ones that they accept on TV, because they have to do their due diligence and look through the business concept. But there are some that may do very well. But they have to sacrifice it first anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. I know. I just sometimes it takes a while for people to recognize that.
Yes.
So, Gary, you talked about working with vendors and resources on terms as one way that one way to bootstrap your business. Are there other bootstrapping ideas, techniques that you work with people on, or suggest to people as they're starting up their business? Looking at their business concept, sometimes they might have to scale it back, or are there other things that you look at?
Absolutely. I think scaled launch is crucial. It's what we call scaled launch, and that means you're launching in increments that you can afford. I'm just not sure. I haven't yet ran into a scenario where an entrepreneur, a true startup, is in a position to come under $250,000 worth of debt and survive. And so you had those conversations when you've been in business for 3 years, you've been profitable for the last 6 months, and now you need to expand. That's when you can, in a responsible and healthy way, begin to consider a healthy amount of debt for your business, for an expansion, or for adding more staff, whatever the case may be. Scaling your launch gives you the ability to do so in a healthy way financially, and in a healthy way occupationally. And most entrepreneurs that I know are still bivocational. So they're working a job somewhere, whether that's part-time or full-time, and trying to see their dreams to fruition. A lot of times it just takes encouraging, just standing with them, coaching them, and filling in the blanks for them when they're too tired to think through the 24-page business plan, and they have questions.
I know that you in the conversations we've had in the past, you're very conservative when it comes to taking on debt and really want to explore all other options before you get there.
Yeah.
So that's very consistent. I know another concept that you are a proponent of, or you talk a lot about, is about hustling. Mm-hmm. And when tell us a little bit about when you tell people they're going to have to do some hustling, what you're thinking there.
Another consistent character trait that I find in new entrepreneurs is that they just really don't have an understanding of how much work it is to start a business. You alluded to it earlier, Gary. Mm-hmm. It's when you undertake to start a business, whether you're bivocational or not, it's just about around the clock. I mean, you are You are the president. You are the CFO. You are the sales team. You are the customer service. You are the receptionist. You are the accounting and the bookkeeping.
And very few of us have all those skills.
True. And exactly. And that's why it's such a. It is a burden. I mean, it really, you come under a great weight when you undertake to start a business, and it takes a unique individual, and I say that intentionally. It takes a unique individual to willingly take on the yoke of entrepreneurship and just go after it with everything that's in them. And really, Jeff and Gary, that's when we're working with entrepreneurs and interviewing and talking with them and doing some discovery, that's one of the things we look for first. We're mining for that relentless pursuit of their dream. Do they want it more than anything? And if we can start there, if we see in them the fire that's going to keep them hustling when it's 8:30 at night and there's about 3 hours worth of bookkeeping left to do, are they going to do that, or are they going to let it roll over and then hurt themselves? Hustle it's the school of busted knuckles, as we talk about. It's the bloody knuckles and the sore backs and the seeing that as the joy of entrepreneurship and not the burden. You know, my papa, he would always say, I'd say to him at the end of the day, he'd say, it would sun be going down, he'd be wore out, sitting in his chair and dozing off after a long hard day working in cabbage or tobacco or whatever. And I'd say to him, "How you doing, Papa?" And he'd say, "I feel good. I feel good. I could look back over my shoulder and see the work that I've done today." Right. And that's really what's got to be your energy for that first year as an entrepreneur. And I say that all the time in the workshops. I'll say, you got to price your products and build your company so that at the end of the day, when you're exhausted and you're just looking for a soft place to fall, when you look over your shoulder and you see the lower 40 plowed, that's all the payment that you need for now. The harvest will come.
Well, Gary, you also recently put a book out called Dirt Road Doctorate, 10 Principles for Business Success from the School of Busted Knuckles.
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit about your book.
Well, it's a book of true stories from my childhood, from a one-lane dirt road in the mountains of North Carolina, that helped shape the way that I see business and the way that I see my fellow man. And so I took true stories from my childhood after much pressure from friends and family to write a book about my life. Wrote 10 true stories and pulled business principles from those stories that I think will help entrepreneurs and business owners alike look at their business and their employees a little different.
Are there? Can you share a story with us? I mean, we
Sure.
probably don't have time to go through 10, but what
Sure.
in terms of something that would be relevant to startups and people starting a business?
Sure.
Tease us a bit.
Well, to go along with this topic today of market research and everything, there's a story of my brother and my cousins. We climbed the side of the mountain there. In fact, if you're looking at the cover of the book, it's the mountain on the left that we had climbed. And that side of the mountain was covered with large grapevines. Very large, the size of a man's arm. So all four of us, my two cousins and my brother and I, had pocket knives. So to get a good swinging vine, you've got to cut it off at the ground. And we had done that. We had decided we were gonna swing for as long as we could till we were called in for supper or whatever. So we cut it off at the ground, and there was a logging road that ran about halfway up the mountain sideways, and my brother was the first one to ride. So he backed up the mountain as far as he could, and being young fellows, we could run. Gary, we could fly. We could sprint. So he ran down just as fast as he could, and he hit that logging road, and off the side of the logging road he went, and he swung for what felt like 30 minutes to us. He swung way out there, and if you've ever swung on a vine, by the time you get to the end, you're beginning to rotate. So he came all the way back, and we got him on the road, and we caught him, and he landed, and he was like, "That's the greatest vine ride ever." Oh, my goodness. So I was next. So I took the vine and I did exactly what he did. I backed way up the side of the mountain and I come running down, hit the dirt road, hit the logging road, and I launched out. And I got all the way to maximum extension on that vine. You could see for miles. And it popped. Once. One little pop. And then panic sets in. When you ride a vine, if you get the pop, you know what's coming next. The thing's about to break. You just start praying and saying, Lord, let me make it back. Well, I didn't. Just a few seconds later, it broke. And I fell all the way down to the mountainside and landed in a pile of wood that my papa had stacked up next to a tree. Thought I was killed.
Nice soft landing there.
Yes.
How convenient.
You know, it was probably better that I landed there instead of on the side of the mountain because I was positioned precariously and that wood went everywhere and I kind of broke my fall. But when I got my senses to me, I could hear the guys up on the road laughing themselves silly. I'm sure that looked hilarious. So the principles that I extract from that is always test the vine. Test your theory. Before you...
Well, I was thinking as you were talking about, I would be the one that the vine would break.
You guys are pretty skinny. I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
Always test the vine. Another principle from that story is don't swing beyond your research.
I like that.
Okay.
Don't swing beyond your research. Look where you would land if you do fall. In other words, pay attention below. And another principle is make sure there's someone to catch you when you get back.
Very good.
And the last principle I think from that story is take in all the views while you're out there, because it may be your last ride.
Yeah, you better enjoy your ride.
That's right. Yeah. You get everything you can out of that ride.
Great messages, and you're here to talk about
That's
it.
That's right. I live to tell about it. It's true.
Well, we appreciate you joining us to share your thoughts today on feasibility, bootstrapping, and also about the
being Tarzan
School of Busted Knuckles.
Right.
There. If people want to find you and want to find your book, where should they be looking, Gary?
They can find me at Norris Ventures, norrisventures.com, and they can find the book Dirt Road Doctorate on Amazon Books.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, we very much appreciate you
thank
joining
you guys
us.
for having me.
Absolutely.
It's been an honor. It really has.
Well, we like to wind up our each podcast by sharing a small business that we've run into during our travels. So, Dean Gary Muller, what is your small business this month?
Well, you know, I have themes of food and animals most of the time. Well, I'm on that theme. I actually got it from my wife. My business of the month is Hen and Egg Restaurant in Newton, North Carolina. Have you heard of it?
Hen and Egg?
It's pretty new, very new.
Not yet.
Okay, we're going to talk about it a little bit. And it's a new reason for residents to wake up early and enjoy some breakfast. The Hen and Egg officially opened the past few weeks. Owners Lamia and Fred Cosby are no strangers to restaurants or the city of Newton. They're previous owners of the Blue Moon Tavern in downtown Newton.
Okay, gotcha.
There
yes,
you go.
Yes.
Yeah. Where they stayed for several years before they sold the business. And prior to that, they owned the Sidewalk Cafe in Conover.
Gotcha.
They wanted to look to get a daytime activity because the Blue Moon is light at night, so I understand that. And so they're doing breakfast and lunch. And they took a building in downtown Newton that needed repair, got a grant, and have refurbished it, so it's going to be a great addition to Newton. Country breakfast all day long, and then a lunchtime cuisine of Southern food. And my wife's, even though she's from the South, isn't as crazy about that kind of food as I am, so she said, I'm going to love it, and it's going to be a great addition to Newton.
Oh, very good.
So there we go, yes.
All right, well, so Hen and Egg
Hen and
Restaurant.
Egg.
All right, well, I will check that one out. So for my small business of the month, I was in a Lowe's grocery store a couple weeks ago, and there was a fellow giving out samples of a local food product called Abby's Better Nut Butter, which is like a peanut butter, but it's made with more healthy ingredients and made in several flavors. And it turns out that the guy that was providing samples was the father of the person who started the business, a young lady named Abby Kirscher in Mooresville, North Carolina. So 2 years ago, when she was only 15 years old, she decided that she didn't like the nut butters on the market, and when she was concerned about ingredients in traditional peanut butters that they were not as healthy for you as she would like. So she started working in her kitchen and created her own nut butter, something that was more healthy, naturally sweetened, tasted good, and started experimenting around and came up with several flavors using nuts, coconut oil, fruit, vanilla extract, salt, and ground coffee beans. And she started coming up with a product, passed the friends and family taste test. She started testing it at farmers markets, was successful there. And 2 years later, Abby's Better Nut Butter is being sold in many Lowe's grocery stores in North Carolina and Tennessee, as well as other independent stores in the Southeast. It has 5 flavors: date pecan, honey almond, coffee almond, coconut cashew, which I tried and thought was very good, and strawberry cashew. So Abby's Better Nut Butter is my small business of the month, local. And so you got to take your hat off to a young lady who made it happen, and she's 17 years old now. You can actually buy her product online at abbysbetter.com, abbysbetter.com. And also show you where it's available to purchase in grocery stores. So that's another one that you should be checking out. So
awesome, very good. That's what I was looking over your shoulder to see.
Seems
it looks cool.
Yeah, I've got a brochure. It doesn't look as good on the podcast.
Yeah, it's tough to tell what it really looks nice though.
So anyway, if you've got a suggestion for our Entrepreneur Exchange Small Business of the Month, you can email them to us at exchange@themesh.tv. And if we use yours, we'll get you an Entrepreneur Exchange prize pack. And, we appreciate you listening. We want to thank Gary Norris for joining us today.
Absolutely. My honor.
We want to thank The Mesh. You can download us at themesh.tv, or you can subscribe at the iTunes store. So please do that, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, folks. Enjoyed it.
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.